Call the meeting of the Board of Commissioners open for the public hearing for the fiscal year 1920 recommended budget. As always, we'll start off with invocation. It's Commissioner Morris's turn.
Please stand, join in if you'd like. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the freedom and ability to meet tonight to do government business, and we ask your blessing as we hear comments from the public and try to evaluate what we should do as we move forward with our budget. Please lead, guide, and direct us as we go into the coming week. In your most gracious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start off with a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. And before I read the rules here, we've had a request from a citizen requesting more than 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask the board if they are okay with that.
Yes. Tentatively, how many minutes does the citizen?
I believe it'll be less than 9.
Less than 9?
He's got you beat, Jimmy.
I just talked half as long as Commissioner Morris last night. I can go up to 10 minutes, says he's, no, we got a sheriff. We do it for him, we got to do it for him too.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak.
I could go with it.
Well, I'll go with the consensus of the board.
Whatever the rest of the board wants.
That's, Mr. Chairman, that's as long as it's nice. And if he starts getting feisty or too rough around the edges, you got the gavel.
Cut it short, all right? So with that, we will allow the kind of waive the 3 minute and give it to a 10-minute limit. Anyone wishing to speak?
We've done that before when we had small numbers of people.
Yeah, okay.
You have a precedent for doing that.
Good deal. I'll go ahead and read the rules of procedure of the public hearing. Please be sure that you have signed in on the sign-in sheet provided if you wish to speak. Please limit your comments to the fiscal year 1920 recommended budget. Please adhere to the 10-minute limit per speaker for tonight. Please note that the board will hear comments at the hearing but will not respond. We will be listening to your comments or concerns. The public hearing will conclude when the last speaker is signed up that has spoken.
Heard a lot of good news about Mr. Hewitt. He just went to California. Yeah.
Jim.
It's all right. It's okay. He and I go back a long ways.
What's the matter? You got tickled or something?
Sure, on the first one.
Let's start with our first person.
Oh,
If you will, please state your name, the address, and we'll start with Miss Ann Nichols.
Hello, my name is Ann Nichols. I reside at 1145 Sandy Lane in Sandy Ridge, North Carolina. I have been an employee of the Northwestern Regional Library System for 25 years. I worked at Danbury my first 2 years, and then I went to King to help pay for my children to go through to college. And it's been an experience. I love what I do. I tell my staff at the library that we're a team, and we work as a team to provide for the public, to provide any service that we can help them with. Today I helped a gentleman who was Asian, and although there was a little bit of a language barrier, I got a laugh from him because he wanted to learn Spanish. So I was able to take his telephone and show him how to use Mango Languages on NC Live. It's a database that's free to all library card holders in North Carolina. And I was able to show him how he could learn to speak Spanish, chapter by chapter. And that was fun, showing somebody something new. And you know, that's something that's never ending. We're always busy at the library. I know that you received a copy of a pay plan. It was an analysis done by Spring Stead. And one of the things that surprised all of us at the libraries here in Stokes County was in showing, compared to 10 similar systems in North Carolina, and I'm not referring to Forsyth. We know we can't get Forsyth County salaries, but compared to 2 similar small regional systems, we were actually, in that documentation, earning 28.5% less than the minimum of what the other employees in these library systems were earning. Now, I know all of you've got a lot that you've got to deal with. You've got to make some tough decisions. I don't envy you that. I appreciate everything you do. But I consider you part of our library team too. Because without each and every one of you, we wouldn't have the funding to go forward and provide the services we do. I don't know if you realize it, but at King, we have a job lab. We help people find jobs all the time. We're working directly with some companies to try to fill positions. We work with Meadowbrook. We actually went into Meadowbrook School and helped the kids to write effective resumes. We had mock interviews, and yesterday 2 of those kids got jobs. Because you see, those kids at Meadowbrook, not all of them are going to be able to afford to go to college. They need a job. So we came in and we helped them with that. We helped them learn how to go into an interview and what's expected at work. No, you don't go in chewing gum. Yes, you wear shoes and nice clean clothes, and you watch your language, and yes, sir, no, ma'am, and you shake with a firm handshake, and then other soft skills. There was a lot that we worked with them, but we really enjoyed it because they were excited. They really wanted the help, and it was a very worthwhile project. But there's lots of other programs that we have all throughout Stokes County. Last year, I lost 2 employees. One of them, in her resignation letter, stated that the salary, she just couldn't afford to work at the salary. That high school kids working at Walmart made more than what she did. And I felt horrible because she was a wonderful employee. But I'd like to be able to have a salary for my employees that enables us to be competitive with other counties and bring good employees in that are going to have the skill set that I need to do the job that our public here in Stokes County needs. And as I said, so many of you, you started off in a library or a school library or with a book or somebody reading to you, and you're probably reading or read to your children, your grandchildren, and more than likely you stepped into a library a time or 2. They're changing, and we're changing too to keep up with the technology. And that's another thing. When you see all this technology, you need to have people on the floor who know how to operate that technology and help the public with it. And so there's so much that we do. You may not realize we've even tried to help people fix little fixes on their computers. I've talked to seniors on the phone to talk them through how to use their iPads or their Kindles. And that's so much fun, but I know how to do it. And sometimes, you may not have someone who would feel that comfortable doing it. But we serve, we love what we do, and we appreciate everything that you do for us and the funding. I just think all of you have been incredible. The Stokes County has been very, very good to the Stokes County Libraries the last 25 years that I've been here, and I appreciate it. And I just wish you blessings on what you've got to go through. I really understand how difficult it is to decide what you've got to cut or how are you going to squeeze through. I know funding's tight. But thank you for listening to me tonight, and thank you for everything you do. And please come by the library. I'd love to see each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Mr. Andy Stevens.
Just as an aside to that, I'll just say briefly before I start that when I was in high school back many years ago, I was elected president of the Catholic Association of Student Librarians of Illinois. So I have a warm spot in my heart for librarians everywhere. Because my first paying job was 50 cents an hour in the school library, rebinding books and things. So. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, staff, public at large. My name is Andy Stevens, and I live in Stokes County outside King. Let me begin by thanking this board and staff for the efforts so far put forth in addressing this most important responsibility. I recognize that many needs are competing for limited resources and that your diligence and efforts are undertaken in good faith and with open minds. My comments and concerns. I note with disappointment that in your budget process to date, not one word has been spoken about improving the lot of our county employees and abandoned animals housed in an outdated, inadequate animal control facility that still shares space at our county waste transfer facility. I note that some see more importance with fancy new bins for disposing of our garbage than for caring for neglected and abandoned pets. With that said, our county operating expenditures should match available county revenues. After all, the budget ultimately must agree to balance and be sustainable. Kicking the tax increase can down the road, if one is truly necessary, does none of us any good. We currently have a combined tax rate in this county of 82 cents. It is supplemented with sales tax revenues and fees. Our county manager has done his homework and projected this combined funding amounts to roughly $49.1 million. I would ask that this board produce a budget constrained in spending to match the recurring funding available. As it now stands, the projected budget, including all requested and proposed spending, costs far more. Before last night's formal request of the school board, county manager indicated the magnitude of this deficit to be approximately a 10-cent increase to ad valorem tax receipts. Adding the requested additional fully funded spending of the school board would result in a shortfall of 13 cents or more. In other words, a combined new tax assessment of 95 cents for the year ahead. Do you know that our county tax payment compliance rate at the current level of taxation is not very good? I've asked the tax department for some detail, and I've learned that the tax compliance of our three municipalities, Danbury, Walnut Cove, and King, are significantly better than the county compliance rate as a whole. What does this tell us? Does it tell us that our Stokes County residents residing outside municipal boundaries are tax cheats or tax evaders? One could cynically make that case. However, I believe it tells us in stark terms that our current rate is greater than many in our county can afford to pay. Raising taxes an additional 16% will force many more to lose their homes and land. This is totally unacceptable. How can we avoid this? Well, number one would be to insist on compliance with paying our assessed taxes in full. Much easier said than done. What else? Well, fully collecting fees from other income sources. Do we do a good job at that? No, we do not. In yesterday's school budget presentation, we learned the school board is foregoing $151,000 in other sources of income and planning to piggyback that expense on the tax bills of already burdened county taxpayers. Why, for example, are we going to provide free public schooling for residents of Forsyth, Surrey, or Rockingham County students? I was aghast when I learned of such a plan. Did we not hear last night that these counties spend far less per pupil than we do now? Why should we foreclose on the properties of Stokes County taxpayers to pay for the education of students residing outside our county? The county board has an obligation to firmly say no to such a scheme. It should insist the school board collect all revenue it can and focus solely on educating Stokes County children. What about our other sources of income? This board, if additional funds are required, should match fees for service to costs. Do we collect sufficient revenues to cover our costs? Raising fees instead of taxes gives each individual a choice to pay it or to forego the service. Please look hard at fees and the costs associated with the services provided and close the gaps that exist between the two. Raise fees for services before our tax rates. What about sales taxes? Sales taxes, like fees, give buyers a choice. They can spend the money and pay the tax or forego the purchase instead. They can opt for a good or service at lesser cost as well. Sales taxes have the benefit of generating additional revenue from non-residents of our county. All of our growing numbers of non-county visitors can contribute. This board should propose and justify raising sales taxes long before raising our property taxes. Place a referendum on the ballot and convince our voters to agree. On the other hand, if voters do not agree, then it behooves this board to understand they desire this board to spend within its means. After all, for some, taxation is theft is more than just a phrase. One question I did not hear our board ask of the school board last night concerns the future size of our school population. Year to year, the average attendance of Stokes County schools has and continues to decline. Yes, the same will be true for next year. You see, I asked the superintendent that very specific question, and he acknowledged lower numbers for next year. We are reaching a point where we will soon have 2 classroom seats in 2 schools for every student. We cannot afford such a luxury any longer. 13 schools is a reasonable number, 19 schools is not. The benefits of consolidation are many. For example, difficulties meeting class size limits can be minimized when there are more students of the same grade in the same place at the same time. For safety and security, less SROs would be required. Surplus properties can be repurposed or sold. It's time to push the school board into making these hard decisions. I recommend fixing the school operating expense at last year's number to incentivize them towards proceeding down this path. Capital expenditures should be limited to maximizing the life and utility of the 13 schools determined to be strategically placed to support the future needs of county students. Our county population itself is stagnant and perhaps declining as well. Yet county department managers initially asked for as many as 42 new positions to fill. How can this be justified when we are not taking care of the county employees we now have? I do believe we have an obligation to those currently employed. Teachers and many of the jobs associated with the school system are funded by the state. The state has been generous over the past several years with year-to-year increases in pay. The proposed budget for the state this biennium contains additional pay raises for school system employees. Yet this board double funded this year's teacher supplement, while county employees receive little, if any, consideration. You must make a good faith effort to improve the lot of these hardworking county employees this year. Holding the line on school operating expenses and foregoing new county hires to favor our current county employees and improve their compensation ought to be your highest priority. How else can you pay for this? Dissolve the 4-cent school fund and flow it back into the general county fund. A future 13-school system will require less dollars to maintain and run than a 19-school system. The adjusted needs can be addressed for the long term once the school board completes its work on the transition to a leaner, more efficient structure. Next year, you'll have the results of your salary study as well, and resources can be matched to needs for personnel and facilities with precision. Finally, I'd like to weigh in with my suggestions for the county fund balance. The county fund balance has been amassed over many years as a result of the prudent, prescient decisions of previous boards of commissioners. They themselves, as stewards of the fund, were diligent about its necessity and intended purposes and nurtured it to grow to where it is today. Granted, the previous board wanted to use a portion of the fund as down payment for initial construction of a wellness center, but that decision was correctly tabled by this board. Now, in contrast to past practice, this board appears ready to draw down this fund merely as a one-time credit card for recurring annual expenses. If you proceed to use it in this fashion, it will be foolish, selfish, and a political face-saving decision. Certainly, we all recognize if the fund is drawn down to the minimum level the board considers adequate, it will not be sufficient in following years as expenses rise. When the total annual budget grows, so must the fund, just to maintain its 25% level. Using it all now in a one-time shot will be perceived designed to hoodwink the voters that no tax increase is necessary. Even worse would be to take the money and then move the target, progressively decreasing the value of the fund balance until the local government commission would have to intervene. I suggest using the fund balance as a temporary cushion for the transition from this year's budget to the next, where a leaner, more efficient, and less costly school operations budget and capital expense funding will exist. At that point in time, the property tax reevaluation will be before you, and a new revenue-neutral tax rate can be calculated and applied. Any dipping into the fund balance for this year can also be paid back at that time. The fund balance is a rainy day fund for unplanned, unexpected, extraordinary circumstances and should remain untouched so as to be ready in case of need. Thank you, Commissioners, for your indulgence. I'm looking forward to the shape and cost of the final budget you produce in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Now that all the speakers who have signed up to speak have spoken, I'll now close the public hearing. With no further business to come before the board.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Ain't it good